Good evening, dear friends. A very warm welcome to all of you here on the occasion of Sri Aurobindo's Withdrawal Day. We further welcome Dr. T. Ramakrishna here to give a talk on Sri Aurobindo on himself, the topic for the day. The significance of Sri Aurobindo's Withdrawal Day, 5th December 1950. On 5th December 1950, at 1:26 a.m., Sri Aurobindo left his body. Of one thing we may be sure, Sri Aurobindo did not succumb to death. For him, as for all great yogis, it was Ichha Mrityu. The mother has said categorically, our Lord has sacrificed himself totally for us. He was not compelled to leave his body. He chose to do so for reasons so sublime that they are beyond the reach of human mentality. His body was suffused with the supramental light. Power and peace and bliss filled the room. Many who came, they came by thousands, were spellbound, dumb and overwhelmed. Untarnished, undimmed, for 5 days, the body lay in a fresh state. On the 9th at 5 p.m., it was entered in a vault in the ashram courtyard under the cool shade of the service tree. Well, friends, the message for today. Sri Aurobindo is constantly among us and reveals himself to those who are ready to see and hear him. A brief introduction of today's speaker, Dr. T. Ramakrishna. Dr. T. Ramakrishna, born in Chittoor, Andhra Pradesh, obtained his PhD from Bangalore University, did his postdoctoral research in neurobiology at University of North Carolina, USA. He has served as the head of department at University of Calicut for more than 2 decades. He is a recipient of Major General Bhatia Oration Award from the Association of Physiologists and Pharmacologists of India in 2002. He has visited Canada, UK, France, US on academic assignments. He has published 2 books on the human brain and has translated Sri Aurobindo's Savitri in Telugu. He has established Sri Aurobindo Center for Education in Human Values as a constituent of the Indian Academy Group of Institutions, Kalyan Nagar, Bengaluru. Well, with these few words, I hand over the session to Dr. T. Ramakrishna. Thank you.
Me Badharo Ma Ananta Prakashani Amita Baladayani Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. With this prayer on my lips, I bow down to the Lord Vasudeva in every one of you. When we want to talk about Sri Aurobindo on himself, there are difficulties. Because what we perceive of Sri Aurobindo is bound to be different from what Sri Aurobindo himself perceives of himself. But I think it is very important to know what Sri Aurobindo felt about his work, his life, and his aspirations for the mankind. It is very important to understand his expectations so that it becomes a little easier for us to follow his writings, his speeches, and whatever he did. That is what I thought I would share with you today. I do not know how many of Indians knew that there are 37 volumes published by the C. Aurobindo Center in Pondicherry, called Complete Works of C. Aurobindo. Early cultural writings, collected poems, collected plays and stories, volume 1 and 2, translations, Vande Mataram 1 and 2, Karma Yogi, writings in Bengali and Sanskrit, record of yoga 1 and 2, essays, divine and human writings, essays in philosophy and yoga, Vedic studies with writings on philosophy, the secret of the Veda, hymns of the mystic fire, Isha Upanishad, Kena and other Upanishads, essays on the Gita, the Renaissance in India, the Life Divine 1 and 2, the Synthesis of Yoga 1 and 2, the Human Cycle, the Ideal of Human Unity, War and Self-Determination, the Future Poetry, Lessons on Poetry and Art, Letters on Yoga 1, 2, 3 and 4, the Mother with Letters on the Mother, Savitri 1, Savitri 2, Letters on Himself and the Ashram, autobiographical notes and other writings, and with the reference volume. And of course, Mother's writings are also there. They are published in 17 volumes. Now, the reason why I thought it is very important for Indians, especially, to know about all the works of C. Aurobindo. In fact, I was suggesting to Mrs. Vaishali that she should display the titles of these volumes at least, if not the contents of each volume. If you go into the contents of each volume, it is very amrita. Nectar is hidden in these volumes. And it is actually worth thinking about prescribing 1 or 2 volumes for some examinations, including UPSC examinations. 1 or 2 volumes, in fact. In fact, I read somewhere a discussion on this in the new education policy, but nothing has materialized. It is very important for our youngsters to know everything about our culture, our civilization. I don't think we have been independent. India has been independent only for the last 75 years. I do not agree with it. We have always been enjoying the freedom, culturally, civilizationally. It is political. You distinguish that. You say politically we are free. For the last 75 years, we have thrown out the British rulers. That's all there is to it. When was Bharat a slave to any other culture? No, I do not agree. That is what is more important. Civilization is important. Culture is important. This, I think, is very important to distinguish between the political freedom and other freedoms. We always enjoy cultural freedom, civilizational freedom. In a manner of speaking, of course, I must recognize that. But why I'm emphasizing that we have always been free is because of Mahanubhavs like Sri Aurobindo. We always had Valmiki here. When did Valmiki disappear from India? When did Kalidasa disappear from India? In fact, when somebody asked C. Aurobindo, he categorically mentioned that I draw inspiration from Maharshi Valmiki and Kalidasa. I go along the same path when I write poetry or when I write prose, whatever you call it. So we have always been free, though we have not been able to derive the complete benefit of our heritage. That, I think, is a regret. But there are people like Sri Aurobindo who derived completely their inspiration and followed the footsteps of these Mahanubhavs, Valmiki and Kalidasa, and he proclaimed loud and clear, don't call me philosopher. I never studied philosophy because people it must be made very clear. I am not a philosopher. I never studied philosophy. Then who are you? I am a poet. He used to proclaim. Poet is what is important. I never studied philosophy. I'm not a philosopher. I know nothing about philosophy. He proclaimed, for whatever reason it is. So at the very beginning, we must recognize Sri Aurobindo as a poet par excellence and then examine that statement. Why he said it, why he said so, that he claimed that he is only a poet and not a philosopher. Philosophy can enter the realms of obscurity sometimes, or more often than not. But poetry is not. Poetry is not obscure. In fact, as Bangaloreans, we all must be proud that this city is decorated with poetry. This is a city of poetry. Kai mugidu ulige ba idu sasyakashi. That is a statement made by the greatest poet of Kannada. Idu sasyakashi. Bangalore is sasyakashi. Kai mugidu ulige ba. What a beautiful poetic statement it is. So we celebrate poetry in Bangalore. We live in poetry in Bangalore. Bangalore and Lal Bagh are synonymous. And when you enter Lal Bagh, you will find this statement of Mahakavi. Kai mugidu uligaba idu sasyakashi. The entire ecology, environmental science, whatever you call it, everything has been put into that one sentence of a poet. A poet can compress so much and express so much in one or two words. That's the beauty of poetry. So it won't be difficult for Bangaloreans to understand the importance of poetry when you recall Mahakavis like Puttappa and so many others. Lal Bagh with this statement, with this proclamation at the entry of Lal Bagh, we can understand what poetry is all about, even if we don't absorb completely the essence of poetry. The whole Bhagavad Gita also is poetry, is so poetical, although it expresses a lot of philosophical truths. That is what Sri Aurobindo is all about. There is no was when it comes to Sri Aurobindo. He is amidst us. There is absolutely no doubt about it as far as I am concerned. If I am speaking about Sri Aurobindo, I feel it is Sri Aurobindo who is speaking. Even if I make mistakes, it doesn't matter. The spirit with which I proclaim certain things is derived from Sri Aurobindo and the mother. There is absolutely no doubt about that. And I have had the pleasure of going through one or two volumes, the first volume at least, Sri Aurobindo on Aurobindo. What did he say about himself is also very important for us to know before we go into the other writings of Sri Aurobindo. He was writing somewhere that British used to talk among themselves. There's the most dangerous man in India for Britain happens to be one man, that is Sri Aurobindo. You know why? He doesn't smile at all. British people used to talk among themselves. It was Sri Aurobindo who does not smile at all. Then Sri Aurobindo states, in response to that statement made by the British rulers perhaps, who it is we don't know, we need not bother about it, they should also have added, but he is capable of cracking jokes. He doesn't smile. Yes, it's true. I may be dangerous because of that, because they have seen the outward expression of the dangers lurking in me for their rule, not for the British. As people, we must make that distinction. It is very clear. It is very clear to those who know Sri Aurobindo through his writings and through his work. At the very beginning, I would recall here one name from USA. He was a scientist, politician, and everything else. You can name, in fact, he was called Newton of America. He did so much of scientific work as Newton did, but they called him Newton of America. Why did I bring Benjamin Franklin's name here in the very beginning? I want to understand the spirit with which Sri Aurobindo always worked. The same spirit I see in Benjamin Franklin of America, 17th century. He was one of the 5 signatories of the Declaration of American Independence. So he was a warrior. He fought for the freedom of America. Otherwise, it would have remained a colony of the British. Why? Most of them have migrated from Britain to USA in search of new pastures. They have cleared the forests there, built their homes. They wanted to live free. But then, what did Britain do at that time? The British government imposed taxes on them also, who ran away from their native homes, built anew, cleared the forests so as to build anew their own homes. The British government still imposed taxes. You must pay taxes. But then what about representation in the parliament, British parliament, they asked, including Benjamin Franklin. No representation. You are our subjects. You should pay taxes. Where is Britain and where is America? And in what circumstances they all ran away from Britain to US. But still, they were compelled to pay taxes. Benjamin Franklin was one of the leaders, one of the few leaders who revolted against this injustice and then proclaimed loud and clear, no taxation without representation. You give us representation in the parliament because we should share the rule. Then we can pay the taxes. No taxation without representation was a movement which was organized. One of the organizers happened to be Benjamin Franklin. In a way, he was fighting for the freedom of the Americans, though they have migrated from the Britain. But I am trying to draw your attention to the personality of Benjamin Franklin because he never had any hatred for the British. In fact, the Royal Society of England invited Benjamin Franklin, made him a fellow of the Royal Society, which he did not accept for years because he was thinking, is it right to accept Royal Society membership, a fellow of British Royal Society, even though I was fighting against them on political grounds. But then you see, they have compelled him, or in a way, very, very honorably, they said, sir, we need you. We need your advice. Please come and stay with us. Advise us because we are in the formative years. The Royal Society was just formed at that time. And finally, Benjamin Franklin went there, stayed there for years, did a lot of work without any sense of hatred towards the British. So they honored him. So that was the spirit with which he fought for the freedom of Americans. And I see the same spirit in Sri Aurobindo. See, there was no hatred against the people, but only their rule. This must be distinguished actually. He cannot. Sri Aurobindo, a person like Sri Aurobindo cannot have hatred for anybody. It was not the hatred, but certain acts have to be performed, even as Benjamin Franklin fought for the freedom of America in those days. And he was one of the 5 signatories of the American Declaration of Independence. So I draw a parallel between Benjamin Franklin of America, but he was a scientist. Sri Aurobindo happened to be a poet. But what is science and what is poetry? These are all things which have been explained very, very clearly by Sri Aurobindo himself, which we are not aware of. I think we should make at least our children aware of these things. And what are the brain processes when the brain is negotiating science? What are the brain processes when it is negotiating the processes of poetry? All these things also have been discussed in one of the volumes of Sri Aurobindo. You will find them all. You will find everything that you need to know in these volumes. That's the reason why I am trying to draw your attention to the volume. This is 29, 37 volumes. You take one volume after another and go on reading. You need not finish one volume in 1 month, or there is no such restrictions. You can enjoy. And there are people in other cultures also, like in Telugu also. There is one essayist which I enjoyed. I am not saying this merely out of my devotion to Sri Aurobindo. I enjoyed reading such monumental essays in Telugu. Sakshi, it is called Sakshi, the witness. The great man wrote so many essays. It will give you the entire knowledge about civilization, about education, about your culture, about everything. The language is so beautiful. The thoughts are so beautiful that you would enjoy reading it. So, volume after volume, if you start reading, then only you will understand who Sri Aurobindo was and what kind of work he was doing in India. Although he was working in India, he was working for the entire humanity. This we must understand. That will be very clear when you go through these volumes. Humanity was his concern. We must uplift ourselves from the morass into which we have fallen, into the ignorance into which we had fallen. Symbolically, it was Satyavan who had fallen into ignorance, and then he had to be lifted. He had to be lifted through the kindness of the mother in the form of Savitri. That is all about Savitri. And of course, what I noticed is, to begin with, they go to Savitri. You will not understand. That's not the way to understand Sri Aurobindo. I think we must begin with these volumes one after another. In prose, simple prose. Of course, his prose also is maybe a little difficult to understand because of his own training and his own education. Not because he wanted to make it very difficult for you to understand, but that is his style. And recently, Sri Ajit ji had visited his school and he must have seen his progress reports in the high school when he was a 7-year or 8-year-old child. His progress reports have been, is really fantastic. The teachers have commented that his language is flowery, it is difficult to understand. He was writing poetry even as a child of 7 years or 8 years old child. Not only in English but also in Greek, Latin, Italian. He studied, of course, Arabic also. He had that love. But we must recognize one thing which we have been taught. When I was in school, we were taught a lot of poetry. There were lessons from Kalidasa, Abhigyana, Shakuntalam. Now, when you read poetry, you derive something more than what the sentence tries to convey to you. Because within that sentence is the strength of the spirit. The spirit can be recognized through poetry more sensibly, more easily than the prose. When you read Shakuntalam, for example, when Shakuntala is leaving the ashram, the way she goes to every tree, every plant, and talks to the tree and the plant, And then she embraces and tells, I will miss you very much. I was watering you every day. And then she turns to the Sakya. Saki, will you please take care of this plant, which is very dear to me? Will you pour water every day? You see that ardrata, is that tenderness, the tender feeling for even the plant or a creeper. It touches your own heart. It mellows down your own heart. These things you will not get in any other manner. You will be absorbed in that. And then when she comes and then finds Dushyanta with Bharata, she questions him. Don't you want to enjoy Putra Parishvanga Sukha? Putra Parishvanga Sukham. Embrace your child. Embrace your son. It's a pleasure. That's happiness. Don't you want? Don't you want that happiness? Putra Parishvanga Sukha. I have not forgotten those words yet. I must have studied this in 50s, early 50s, not even late 50s. One lesson, I have not read the entire Shakuntalam. One lesson from that Shakuntalam is still fresh in my mind and heart because it mellows down the way she behaves and the way she questions Dushyanta and then asks him to enjoy that Putra Parishvanga Sukha. Putra Parishvanga Sukha. Embrace your child, embrace your son, and enjoy the pleasure. You see, the poetry is such that it will touch your heart. And that is what happens when you read Savitri. Right, when I was translating Savitri from English into Telugu, as Vaishali has already mentioned, it was very difficult for me to move away from one line to the other. One line I will read, translate it, and stay there. Stay there for more time than is necessary because I did not want to lose the pleasure of enjoying the beauty of that sentence. One line, line after line, I enjoyed. This I did because I have read earlier many works of Sri Aurobindo. The first thing was about literature and poetry, or literature and poetry. What is art? What is literature? What is poetry? He wrote a small book. If you go through step by step all his writings, then it becomes easy to understand Savitri also. I need not go into Savitri now because it requires, Savitri alone requires maybe a pretty long time. So I will not go into that. I will only draw your attention to the fact that Sri Aurobindo did yeoman service not only to India but to the entire mankind by trying to uplift your mind into the superior realms, because we work in a realm which is ordinary for the mankind, but he tried to uplift that spirit to the higher realms through poetry, especially poetry and also prose. He wrote Vishaya Vivechana. If I talk about the Vishaya, the material that he commented upon includes, in fact, subjects in science also. Like, for example, how does your brain function? You know who gave us that knowledge? It was only Sri Aurobindo who gave us that knowledge. What does left side of the brain do? What does the right side of the brain do? He wrote an essay on that in 1910. And only in 1970s and 80s, US neurosurgeons have performed certain experiments which they called as left and right brain surgery. You see, through surgical techniques, they have separated the left lobe of the brain from the right side of the brain so that they could test separately what the left side does and what the right brain does. One neurosurgeon by name Sperry Rocha got a Nobel Prize for this work in late 80s. I heard his lecture in Toronto in late 60s. But till then, in 1910 itself, not taking a scalpel, not doing surgery. See, Aurobindo gave us this entire knowledge of what the left side of the brain hemisphere does and what the right side of the hemisphere does. It is there in the magazines, Arya. We can read it even today. And what is its source, we don't know. I, in fact, spent considerable time in asking these questions, but we do not know the original source. Which Veda it is, I don't know. I mean, I'm just speculating. Is it in some Veda? We don't know. It is for us to find out if it is there. Why I'm mentioning this is because for the very first time, I was jolted by one thought of Sri Aurobindo. That was about Agni. He translated the first Veda also, Rig Veda, into English. It is not that he wrote everything in English. He also translated our Sanskrit works into English. The other way also. He learned Sanskrit. In fact, he used to get the highest marks in Greek language while he was studying in Cambridge. And one Englishman used to get highest marks in Sanskrit because they used to teach classical languages in Cambridge University. And very interestingly, the Englishman who used to get the top marks in Sanskrit in Cambridge, had come to India into the judicial service. He was the judge, in fact, who released Sri Aurobindo. It so happened that he had to stand before that judge, who was his own classmate. He used to get the top marks in Sanskrit in Cambridge, whereas Sri Aurobindo used to get top marks in Greek language. The judge knew Sri Aurobindo. Not because of that he was released. He was released because of Chittaranjan Das' arguments. Chittaranjan Das, a great lawyer, he had argued so very well that judge, in fact, had no reason to continue him in prison, continue Sri Aurobindo in prison. He was in Baroda prison at that time. Now, when Sri Aurobindo talks about poetry, he knew what he's talking about. He knew from what level of your brain the poetry comes. In fact, he knew the close connection between poetry and yoga. Through yoga, you are ascending in strength. If there are steps, and then if you gain strength by climbing up, then you are actually receiving enormous powers from above, as he puts it. It is for you to understand what he means by from above. When you sit in meditation, when the silence is surrounding you, what comes is from above. That is what Sri Aurobindo used to tell. Above means what? It's for you to think about it and understand. You will experience that something is coming from above and entering through the realms of your brain. And that's the reason why he used to tell, take the pen and paper, start writing poetry. Where does it come from? It comes from above, not from within you. It comes from above. Don't worry that you cannot write poetry. You take the paper and pen and sit in meditation. Sit with determination that you want to write a poem. It will come from above. So he had seen the connection between these realms, the divine realms from above, and the material brain that you have, that you possess. It can be raised, the level of functioning can be raised. That's the reason why Sri Aurobindo used to lay so much of emphasis on sitting silently in meditation, especially if you want to write poetry. And he also had shown the way you bring in two words together It will make so much of difference in conveying tremendous amount of meaning. And you find it difficult, or most people find it difficult to understand Savitri because they have not understood what poetry is all about. This is the first thing that we must do. In fact, there was Kattamanchi Ramalinga Reddy, who was his junior in Cambridge. This Kattamanchi Ramalinga Reddy comes from the same town where I was born, in Chittor, Andhra Pradesh. He became Vice Chancellor of Andhra University later on. He was his junior in Cambridge. When Sri Aurobindo was leaving Baroda College, he suggested to the Maharaja of Baroda that Kattamanchi Ramalinga Reddy would be my worthy successor as principal or first vice principal and then principal of Baroda College, which later became Baroda University. So Kattamanchi Ramalinga Reddy went there as vice principal and professor of English. Why am I bringing Kattamanchi Ramalinga Reddy here? He also studied similar subjects like Sri Aurobindo in Cambridge. He was the one who gave the arithmetic of poetry, if I may say so, if I am permitted to use that expression. You must understand the arithmetic of poetry. It may sound like contradiction. No, there is no contradiction. There is a definite formula using which you join two words in poetry. That's what I meant by there is an architecture in poetry. They have learned that. You have to learn that. Better you learn it in the childhood. We have to take care of the children and teach them these things. How to join two words. So there is a grammar, there are rules following which you bring two words together or three words together, four words together. Then the entire sentence becomes different when compared to one sentence, one word that you have used. There are rules. There are doyens from Kashmir who gave us this knowledge. Abhinava Gupta, Anandavardhana. Kashmir, where is Kashmir and where is South? Sri Shankara has also studied this grammar from these Kashmiri Pandits. So there was no difference actually between Kanyakumari and Kashmir from the very beginning. This was Akhanda. And I also call it Virat Bharat. Is it not Virat when you think about that? Where are Kashmiri Pandits and where is Kaladi? So he walked all the way. He imbibed that knowledge which was given by the Kashmiri Pandits. So also Sri Aurobindo and Kattamanchi Ramalinga Reddy. It was Kattamanchi Ramalinga Reddy who wrote for the very first time in Telugu about these rules of poetry, who became Vice Chancellor of Andhra University. And what very interesting had happened when he was Vice Chancellor of Andhra University in Visakhapatnam. That was 1948. He wanted to give Kattamanchi Ramalinga Reddy Prize of Eminence to some Indian who has done extraordinary work in contributing to the cultural and civilizational revival of India. And he chose naturally Sri Aurobindo to receive that prize. That was 1948 when Rajagopal Achari was the Governor General of India. He just succeeded the British who left. I want to forget his name actually. Not that I wanted to. It so happens that I forgot. You know his name, don't you? Mountbatten. He left and then succeeded by Mr. Chakravarti Rajagopalachari, who was born in a nearby town to Bangalore, close to Bangalore. It is now in Tamil Nadu. You see, Sri Aurobindo naturally did not go to Visakhapatnam from Pondicherry to receive that prize. He was sitting in Pondicherry. But Sri Rajagopalachari came from Delhi and there was a convocation meeting. And what did Rajagopalachari say? He said, see, Aurobindo need not come here from Pondicherry. Being a yogi, he can be there as well as he can be here. Right now, he is here. Right now, he is there too because he is a yogi. And he wrote actually a message. See, Aurobindo wrote an extraordinary message. Thank you. On the request of Kattamich Ramalinga Reddy, which I think we must preserve for the future and recall the contents of that message. That is what I would like to comment to you. The message, I will take time to read that because I think it's a very, very important message which must be preserved in the Rashtrapati Bhavan and also in the parliament. We don't do these things. We don't think of these things. In fact, we criticize anything that the government does. Anything that the government does need not be criticized. It should be on merits. The message goes like this. This is Sri Aurobindo's message to Andhra University on their request when he was honored with that prize from the university. And incidentally, I must also mention that Kattamich Ramalinga Reddy was succeeded by Srinivasa Iyengar as Vice Chancellor of Andhra University, who was the official biographer of Sri Aurobindo. I do not know whether you had seen that biography. That is monumental work. And the language is similar to Sri Aurobindo's prose there. And the most important thing is, Srinivasa Iyengar got that original version corrected by Sri Aurobindo himself. His biography is there. I have read his biography. See, these are all things, preliminary things which you must do before you can try to understand Sri Aurobindo's writings. There is a big chapter on Savitri also in the biography. We have to do this preliminary work, preliminary preparation to understand what Sri Aurobindo wrote, whether it was prose or poetry. The message goes like this. I would have preferred silence in the face of these circumstances that surround us. It was 1948, you remember. 47, we got political independence. For any words we can find fall flat amid such happenings. You know what was happening in 47, 48. This much, however, I will say that the light which led us to freedom, though not yet to unity, still burns and will burn on till it conquers. I believe firmly that a great and united future is the destiny of this nation and its peoples. The power that brought us through so much struggle and suffering to freedom will achieve also, through whatever strife or trouble, the aim which so poignantly occupied the thoughts of the fallen leader at the time of his tragic ending. As it brought us freedom, it will bring us unity. A free and united India will be there, and the mother will gather around her sons, and weld them into a single national strength in the life of great and united people. The message is to Andhra University is very specific, and I will just read some passages. In this hour, in the second year of its liberation, the nation has to awaken to many more very considerable problems, to vast possibilities opening before her, but also to dangers and difficulties that may, if not wisely dealt with, become formidable. There is a disordered world situation left by the war, full of risks and sufferings and shortages, and threatening another catastrophe which can only be solved by the united effort of the peoples and can only be truly met by an effort at world union such as was conceived at San Francisco but has not till now been very successful in the practice. There are indeed other numerous and difficult problems that face this country or will very soon face it. No doubt we will win through, but we must not disguise from ourselves the fact that after these long years of subjection and its cramping and impairing effects, a great inner as well as other liberation and change, a vast inner and outer progress is needed if we are to fulfill India's true destiny. So he has hinted that India has its own destiny and we must fulfill. Of course, there are other things also which he refers to, like linguistic states and the troubles which might arise. All those things are all included in the message, but I didn't read the entire message. But a very timely message was sent to the Andhra University that we must all be very, very careful in the presence of the then Governor General, Mr. Rajagopalachari. Now, when we read through his writings, you forget about Savitri. See, don't begin with Savitri. That is my humble appeal to everyone, in fact, whosoever I meet, and those who are interested in reading Sri Aurobindo. I used to advise, rightly or wrongly, don't touch Savitri until you read the other things. You learn how to understand his prose first. There are so many volumes. That is why I mentioned there are so many volumes which are published. You take any volume, you can read anything because these are all, discrete units. You can absorb anything. You can also read the small book, Art, Literature and Poetry. And then you can go to Savitri because it's not at all difficult to understand. In fact, recently I wrote in English and I think the submiss was gracious enough to tell me that he is going to have that book as his reference book on his desk, because I simplified it in the sense that the story runs through all the lines. I have chosen only those lines which tell the story, because what happens is people get into Savitri and they get absorbed by the beauty of poetry. If you understand what poetry is all about, that's what's happened to me at least. But then you miss the story. But once you know the story, it is like sutra running in a pushpamala. You see, sutra it cannot be seen, but sutra is there. But if once you know that story, then you will really enjoy the poetry which surrounds it. It's a beautiful poetry because there is nothing like Sri Aurobindo's poetry. That I can tell you, because there are at least bits and pieces which we were made to learn, including Milton's, Paradise Lost and Shakespeare. Bits and pieces, but poetry it is, you see. But if you know and understand these things, then I think Savitri is the thing that is the ultimate thing that you should go, not the first thing. But once you get into Savitri, there is no coming back. This, I think, is the message that I would like to give you today. And read these volumes. One of these volumes you read first before we enter Savitri. That way, I think we can get the real message that Sri Aurobindo wanted to convey to not only Indians but the mankind. Now, there are strifes which he refers to in this message. In those days, strife has always been there. Is it not there now? What for? What for people kill themselves? I do not understand why a Russian should kill, what is the land? Ukrainians. And what is that? Why should Ukraine suffer? Why should Russia suffer? I don't know. I don't understand really. If you get into the issues which surround this conflict, you get nothing out of it. You don't understand what it's all about. I think this message is very, very important because Sri Aurobindo was working for the entire humanity, and whatever he wrote is for the humanity. That is one thing that we need to understand and read at least one of these volumes. If you read one volume, I think you will read all the volumes. That is my hope, and that is actually my prayer to all of you today. And thank you very much.
Well, friends, Dr. T. Ramakrishna has very beautifully explained the versatile genius of Sri Aurobindo as a poet, scientist, yogi, and many other innumerable aspects. Sri Aurobindo's global role in uplifting humankind to superior realms India's great destiny, and many others. We thank him very much. We close this session with the mother's message given on 7th December 1950. Lord, this morning thou hast given me the assurance that thou wouldst stay with us until thy work is achieved. Not only as a consciousness which guides and illumines, but also as a dynamic presence in action. In unmistakable terms, thou hast promised that all of thyself would remain here and not leave the earth atmosphere until earth is transformed. Grant that we may be worthy of this marvelous presence, and that henceforth everything in us be concentrated on the one will to be more and more perfectly consecrated to the fulfillment of thy sublime work. Thank you, Divine Mother and Sri Aurobindo.